Hello, welcome to the program. The Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman took almost 2.5 hours to present her second budget. This budget was supposed to be a very major statement of policy on the part of the central government, which has been facing a lot of crisis in the last few months. Actually, Nirmala Sitharaman's budget has a lot of declarations, a lot of claims, a lot of verbiage. In fact, she goes from a very famous Kashmiri poet, then she moves on to the Tamil poets like Avayar, Thiruvalluvar and so many others. And she also makes a very interesting discovery about the Harappan seals, which are actually not been deciphered so far. She says that the Harappan seals have declarations about, writings about Sreni, Sreshti, things like that. That is words meaning the huge trade that was happening during that period. Harappans may have made the trade, but what their writing has not been really deciphered. But the minister claims that she has already read it. That's well and good. So when we are looking at the budget, without this kind of fireworks and inanities, what exactly is the message that we are getting out of it? Let us look at certain indications that has been happening even as the time she was making the budget presentation in the parliament. Look at the parliament, look at the response in the parliament itself. Initially, even a large number of people were making a very big noise about it, thumping on the desk and making declaratory, very declaratory pronouncement about it, that this is a great budget. But over a period of time, once the reality settled down, nobody was making any big false claims, because they could understand that there is nothing really substantial in the budget. There is nothing that actually attracts the mind of the people in the budget. When you look at the budget and the entire speech, there is nothing that gives you confidence that this budget is going to lift the country out of the very serious economic and financial crisis that we are in. There is no scope, there is no chance that the budget and its proposals will be able to bring in relief to the Indian citizens, bring development to the country and give a fillip to the economic growth of the country. There is nothing like that in the budget. Why the budget fails in making that kind of an impact on the Indian society and Indian mind and the Indian economy? You can't blame the finance minister for the kind of situation that we are in today, because this is the kind of situation that we are in, which is extremely against economic growth, because of the social strife, because of the political strife, because of the massive feeling that India is now a basket case. That has been the creation of the political bosses, especially the active, the recent legislations from the Home Ministry and others. And also, if you are looking at the Indian economy in the last 1 year, there is a very clear signal that India has been going back. The economic growth has actually come down to 4.8% according to the IMF in the present financial year. The finance minister claims that in the next financial year we will be having a nominal growth of 10%, which is completely a very big claim, nothing more than that. Even the economic survey that was released yesterday, that day before the presentation of the budget, in that economic survey, the central government agrees that there has been a massive decline in the economic growth, and the actual growth in the 2020-21 financial year may be 6 to 6.5 percentage of GDP growth. That is not a big deal, because we had reached up to 9% in the past. And secondly, what message we are getting about the possibilities of growth in this budget? The finance minister gives three areas as the thrust areas of this budget. She says that this is an aspirational budget, a budget that reflects the aspirations of the Indian people, because India is the fifth richest economy in the world. That is true. And secondly, she says that this is a development oriented budget. We Indians are actually looking forward to an extremely rosy future in the coming days. And thirdly, she said this is a caring budget, a budget that actually takes care of the demands and needs of the ordinary sections of the Indian people. That's also a very welcome declaration. But what are the realities with regard to these claims? The fact is that the finance minister makes the point very clear that India's fiscal deficit in the coming year will be 3.8% of the GDP, which is a substantially higher deficit level compared to the past. In fact, the FRBM Act, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, stipulates that this deficit cannot overshoot 3%. Already we have reached a level of 3.3% in the last year. Now she has actually accepted that the deficit is going to be 3.8%, 8% of the GDP, which is an indication that we are going back to the situation of a big debt trap as in the early 90s. That could get us into very serious trouble, because what we are doing is to borrow money to finance our actual expenditure. And she has given three major areas as the focus areas. One is the infrastructure in the economy, developing infrastructure for the future growth of the country. Secondly is the focus on the agriculture sector. And thirdly, she focuses on the needs of the social sector. Let us look at the infrastructure. 100 lakh crore is a massive amount. She claims to set out for development activities in the infrastructure areas, like airports, like new railway system, like development of the seaports, so many other things. These are all exceptionally good agendas. But where do we get the money? The money, she claims, that will be raised through the privatization of the public sector undertaking like LIC, and also through public-private partnership. Public-private partnership is a good idea, but if the private sector has to invest money, they will have to have a confidence that their money will be returned. They will be able to make a profit out of it. If you look at the recent Indian economic situation, the fact is that most investors were not willing to invest in the Indian economy. There was a stagnation in investment in the country because people were not really confident that India is a safe place to invest. So that expectation that private sector will be contributing to the massive infrastructural demands is something overrated. I do not think it is possible for the finance minister to raise that kind of money for infrastructure development. And secondly, she says that agricultural sector investment will be massively improved. Almost 3 lakh crores is the amount that she has been promising for the farmers in the country. And she also promises that in the next 2 years, but that is within 2022, the income of the Indian farmer will be doubled. You have heard this earlier also. This promise has been there right from 2014 when Narendra Modi took over for the first time. At that time they said that the income of the Indian farmer will be doubled within 5 years. From 2014 to 2019, 5 years finished. Now it is the 6th year. What is the condition of the Indian farmer? Indian farming industry, Indian farming sector has been seeing a massive decline in its income. If you look at the massive agitations in the agriculture sector, it is a fact also that the income of the person has been actually going down. The real income of the person has been going down. Now the finance minister claims that within 2 years they will be able to double the income of the Indian farmer. This is a magic. Nothing more than a magic. Actually, there is no way that the Indian economy can be rebooted in such a manner that the farming industry, the farming sector will be able to generate so much of wealth. She has given so many projects, so many claims, but ultimately I don't think it is possible for any government to increase the farming sector growth in such a massive manner in a big country like India, especially when we are going through a very crisis-ridden economy. And the third sector that they are talking about is social sector, where she claims that earlier projects like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, things like that had given a big fillip to the social sector, that disadvantaged sections of the Indian people have benefited. A large number of almost 70 million people have been lifted out of poverty lines, things like that. The fact at the same time is that the rate of growth of poverty eradication has been declining. This is what has been actually been discovered by a number of economists, that the India's poverty reduction rate has been going down in the Narendra Modi years compared to the massive poverty eradication programs during the Dr. Manmohan Singh years. That's another thing. Anyway, so there are so many claims. Another big claim is that we are going to have internet all over the country, the best and the most efficient internet in the country, so that Indian economy will be a digital economy of 21st century. I don't think there is any need to remind you what is happening all over the country in the second Narendra Modi government. Most part of the country has been facing internet shutdown, especially places like Kashmir and so many other places also. There is no they are shutting down the internet. So what is the use of internet if it is not available to you? Anyway, then another area that she makes claims about big massive growth is employment generation. But look at what has happened. The Make in India program, that was one of the most important projects started by the Narendra Modi government in the last avatar. That is from 2014. They declared that India will become the manufacturing hub of the world. That is what was called the Making India project. But there was no real improvement in the Indian manufacturing sector at all. There was no real growth in job generation in that sector at all. Instead, what actually has happened is that because of the wrong policies of the government, like demonetization, a large number of jobs which were available in the country has been destroyed. That is the situation that we are facing today. So when you look at the budget of the finance minister, what is the final picture that is emerging out of it? After 2.5 years listening to her, I was asking myself whether there is a single point in the government's budget that gives some hope for the country. I was unable to remember anything. There is the budget gives you the feeling that the kind of very sad, difficult situation that we have been facing in the last many months, especially after this demonetization project and all that, we are going to continue in that situation for the next year also, because there is nothing that the budget actually gives you for a hope. Look at the promises with regarding the agriculture sector. That is one point that I would like to focus on right now. She said that the peasants will be supported. What actually is happening? The subsidies that were available to the farmers in the form of fertilizer subsidy, things like that, that is being slashed. That is substantially cut down. That means that the farmer will have to spend more of his money to produce the same kind of agricultural produces in the next year. If he doesn't get an economically better returns, he will be in trouble. So that's the situation. The promises are there, but the reality is completely different. This is the final picture emerging out of the budget. That the budget makes a lot of claims. The budget claims that this is going to be a wonderful solution, the magical solution to the problems that India is facing. But when you look at the details of the budget, when you look at the actual experience of the people in the last 5 years of the Narendra Modi rule, there is nothing that gives us confidence that this government, this budget is going to be of any help to the Indian people in the coming year. Thank you.